Welcome back to Photoshop for Photographers. And today we're going to take a look at the contrast blend modes. And those contrast blend modes are overlay, soft light, hard light, vivid light, linear light, pin light, and hard mix. All right, the first thing we're going to do is take a look at Adobe's definition here of overlay. So overlay multiplies or screens the colors depending on the base color. Patterns are colors overlay the existing pixels while preserving highlights and shadows of the base color. The base color is not replaced, but mixed with the blend color to reflect the lightness and darkness of the original color. I'm sure everybody's totally got that and understands exactly what's going on now. A lot of these blend modes are very difficult if you read the definition or you try to explain to somebody what they're doing. A lot of this is going to be visual, and I'm going to kind of point out or try to explain what's going on here visually. So we've got this grayscale image here. So we have a grayscale here. This is black, 100%, 50% gray, and white. Now, if we take a look at the definition, it multiplies or screens colors. Now remember, everything in this blend mode is increasing the contrast. So anything that's light, it's going to make it lighter, and anything that's dark, it's going to make it darker. The difference is each one of these kind of tackle it and do this just a little bit different. Now, you have overlay and soft light. These are very, very popular blend modes in Photoshop. And then you have hard light, vivid light, linear light, pin light, and hard mix. And those are not very popular in Photoshop. So what you'll see is a lot of times there are things in here I can say I don't use hard light, and I've never used vivid light. I never have used pin light. However, I have used linear light, and I use linear light actually when retouching a subject and you blend the detail layer to make it sharper. And that has nothing to do with vivid light. What you're trying to do is increase the contrast. It's almost like sharpening your image. Here's me using vivid light, and I'm actually using it to sharpen an image within Photoshop. So let's continue on here with overlay. And so what's going to happen on this? So multiplies or screens colors depending on the base color. So it's looking at the bottom one, and it's either going to multiply or brighten the base color. Patterns or colors overlay the existing pixels. So meaning the top picture, the patterns or colors are going to overlay that while preserving highlights and shadows of the base color. The base color is not replaced, but mixed with the blend color, which is the top color, to reflect the lightness and darkness of the original color. Let's take a look at this, and we're going to go here to overlay. And so what do we have here? So remember, this is a gray scale over here, and this is our black, our gray, and our white. So right here, if we turn this on and off, you'll notice that 50% gray, nothing's happening. So 50% gray is nothing's happening. Well, why? Because it has to be greater than 50% to darken, and it has to be lighter than 50% to lighten. So if we take a look at this, where we have a lighter area, it's getting lightened, and where we have a darker area, it's getting darkened. And this is very, very extreme in the process of what it does. So let's come up here, and we are going to turn on this image of these trees. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this blend mode to overlay, and you can see we're getting in a not only overlay where it's blending the two images and the patterns together, but we're also getting a strong increase in contrast. Now, the next one that we're going to take a look is very similar. So soft light is like the baby version of overlay. It darkens or lightens the colors depending on the blend color. The effect is similar to shining a diffuse spotlight on the image. To blend the color, aka the light source, is lighter than 50% gray, the image is lightened. If it was dodged, the blend color is darker than 50% gray, it is darkened, as if it were burned in. Painting with pure black or pure white produces a distinctly darker or lighter area, but doesn't make it pure black or pure white. And that's the opposite of what we're seeing here. So in overlay, when we do this, notice in this area, we're getting really dark images where it's really adding a lot of contrast. So we're going to switch this to soft light. And so if you notice, we have this kind of soft gray or reddish value. Now it's overlaying the pattern, and it's adding some contrast, but it's not making this super black or super dark like it did in overlay. So a lot of times when you are using a blending mode, you're either going to use overlay or soft light, and soft light is kind of like a mild effect and overlay is like a strong effect. I tend to not like super contrasty images. I tend to prefer soft light, but this is definitely a personal preference. Let's go back here and turn on this grayscale. So this is our grayscale. What I want you to do is look right up here in this black, how this is affected. So overlay, if I turn this to soft light, still increasing the contrast here and here, but nowhere as dramatic as it did in overlay. All right, the next blending mode that we have here is hard light. And the definition is it multiplies or screens the colors depending on the blend color. The effect is similar to shining a harsh spotlight on the image. If the blend color, aka the light source, is lighter than 50% gray, the image is lightened if it were screened. So it's referring to the screen blending mode above. This is useful for adding highlights to an image. If the blend color is darker than 50% gray, the image is darkened as if it were multiplied. This is useful for adding shadows to an image. Painting with pure black and pure white results in pure black and pure white. All right, so let's take a look at this portrait of this woman right here. So we have this overlay, and we're going to go ahead and turn that on, and we are going to change this to hard light. So what is hard light doing? Notice in black, it's turning it totally black. In white, it's turning it totally white. Where it's 50% gray, there's no effect. So a good way to remember how this works is remember how screen and multiply work. So what they're doing is they're taking the value of this top layer and darkening the pixel below. It's not replacing it, it's just darkening the pixel below by how much the difference is. So as you get darker or darker, it's making that pixel below much darker. And as you get lighter and lighter, it's making that pixel lighter and lighter. And you're kind of getting this like beautiful quality light where it's kind of washed out all the way to total dark. So let's go ahead and turn this off. And what we're going to do, and this is an easy way to see the contrast differences, I'm just going to go ahead and add an adjustment layer. And we're just going to go ahead and change that blending mode. Remember, we're not doing anything to it. We're just changing it to hard mix. So what we can do here is turn this on and off and see how this works. What is it doing? Well, it's multiplying in the shadow areas and it is lightening in the highlight areas. And we're getting this hard mix, really kind of like high contrast, fine art glamour look in this image. This is a good example of one way to use hard mix. A lot of times when you do an effect, it's a little bit too much, so we can just come in here and dial this out, kind of narrow that down exactly where we want. And now we're using the hard mix to add contrast. It is increasing the brightness and the saturation as well in this image, but that is hard mix blending modes. Now, it's not a blending mode that I use a lot, but this is hard mix, and occasionally you're going to find reasons to use this. The next one that we have is vivid light. Vivid light burns or dodges colors by increasing or decreasing the contrast depending on the blend color. If the blend color, the light source, is lighter than 50% gray, the image is lightened by decreasing the contrast. So this is important. The image is lightened by decreasing the contrast. If the blend color is darker than 50% gray, the image is darkened by increasing the contrast. Looking at the top color, if it's darker, it is increasing the contrast. If it is lighter than 50% gray, it is decreasing the contrast. So we can take this image here and we are going to change this over to vivid light. And you can see This is really giving us a strong look. It's completely washing out this highlight area, and it's making this area total black. Let's turn this off and go back to our grayscale here. And we're going to go ahead and select this, and we're going to change hard light to vivid light. Once again, 50% gray is not being affected. White is being made totally white. Black is being made totally black. Vivid light is dodging or burning by increasing or decreasing the contrast. Vivid light isn't something I'm really a fan of. I've never actually found a use for it. I'm sure there's some great uses for vivid light, but it's just not something that I use. Next thing that we have is linear light. Now, linear light is that one that I've talked about that I actually use. You use it in high frequency separation to actually increase contrast. You can also use it when doing high pass as well, once again, to increase contrast. And really, the increase in contrast is a sharpening tool. It is nothing to do with really light on the image. It's a sharpening tool. Linear light burns or dodges the colors by decreasing or increasing the brightness. So depending on the blend color, if the blend color or the light source is lighter than 50% gray, the image is lightened by increasing the brightness. If the blend color is darker than 50% gray, it is darkened by decreasing the brightness. So once again, we'll change from vivid light to linear light. So you can see 50% gray, not affected, black, darkened, white, completely whitened. And if we turn this on and off, we can see it is really doing some nice things here. But remember, so if the color is brighter on top, it's increasing the brightness, not the contrast. It's increasing the brightness. And here it's darkening the brightness of the image. Up here, we'll turn this off, go back up here to hue saturation, go from linear light. And there's linear light. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you sort of, this is the simple version. I'm going to hit Command J and I'm going to go up to your filter, other, high pass. I'm going to change radius should be at 2. You're going to say okay. And then you're going to change this blending mode to linear light. And what you're going to get here, and we will sort of zoom in here, is we are going to increase the dynamic contrast or the contrast of this image. So if you look at this, you can see where that edge, we're really increasing the contrast. So we're using linear light on this high pass layer to actually sharpen the edges or contrast in this image. So it's not affecting the shadows, they're only affecting the kind of high contrast areas. So in here, or where there's a variance in difference, we are increasing the contrast of that image. So that's one use for linear light. The next thing that we have here is pin light. Replaces the colors on the blend color. If the blend color, aka the light source, is lighter than 50% gray, the pixels darker than the blend color are replaced. So it's not doing everything, it's just doing the pixels that are darker are replaced. And the pixels lighter than the blend color do not change. If the blend color is darker than 50% gray, pixels lighter than the blend color are replaced. No, they're not mixed or darkened, they're replaced. And pixels darker than blend color do not change. This is useful for adding special effects to an image. And this kind of is where I say I don't really use pin light. I don't use special effects. And that's why you won't see me using this a lot of times. So what we'll do is we'll go back up here. We're going to change this to pin light. Black is being completely replaced with black. White is being completely replaced with white. 50% gray isn't affected. And so this is what we are getting by using pin light. Remember, it's replacing. So this white or this grayscale, it's actually replacing the pixel. That's why we're losing some detail here, because it's actually taking that brighter pixel and replacing the pixel below it. And where it's darker over here, it's actually replacing it with a different pixel. And you get some weird effects. And that is pin light. And then the last one that we have here is hard mix. Hard mix adds red, green, and blue channel values of the blend color to the RGB values of the base color. If the resulting sum for the channel is 255 or greater, it receives a value of 255. If less than 255, a value of 0. Therefore, all blended pixels will have red, green, and blue channel values, either 0 or 255. So let's take a look at hard mix. So we're going to turn on this adjustment layer and switch from pin light to hard mix. So you can see you're getting this kind of crazy effect, but it's looking at the different channel values and then it's replacing the channels with either colors or white or black. It's kind of a funky thing. It's one of those things you need to play around with to see how it works. So if I come over and grab this woman here, and we'll go ahead and we're going to turn that off. We're going to turn on this overlay layer, and then I'm going to switch this to hard mix, and you can see you get this sort of really evil kind of black, white, reddish image by sending that blend mode. We can turn this one off, a different one. We can come over here. We'll switch that to hard mix, and you get this very kind of like poster type image. So once again, we're just going to run through that. So we've got that image overlay, and it looks like this, and we're going to come over here. So this is overlay, soft light, hard light, vivid light, linear light, pin light, hard mix. There's no right or wrong when it comes to these types of blending modes. I mean, anything is useful. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. The better you understand these blend modes, the easier it is for you to think ahead and make it easier for you to blend two completely different images. I'll say overlay and soft light are actually used a lot in photography. Hard light and vivid light, not quite used as much. I actually use linear light quite often, but for purposes of sharpening. And then we have kind of the extremes, which are pin light. Hopefully that's been helpful. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe.